Alright, so we'll look at the two additional tests that need to be met by both qualifying child and qualifying relative. So this is what these are. So in addition to meaning they're unique tests for the qualifying child and qualifying relative, the qualifying child or the qualifying relative must also meet the following two tests. So these are common to both. So what we looked at before were the unique tests. The qualifying child has 4 unique, and then the qualifying relative has 4 of its own that are unique. Then on top of that, these two are common to both, and then these need to be looked at. So every single dependent that we're looking at, we need to make sure they satisfy this, plus 4 others, which are going to be either the qualifying child or qualifying relative tests. So those tests are the joint return test and the citizenship or residency test. The joint return test basically is saying that the dependent could not have filed a joint tax return with his or her spouse. If they did file a joint tax return with their spouse, in general, they cannot qualify to be someone else's dependent. However, there are, a few exceptions. They ignore this word here. It should be the following 2 conditions and not 3. I only have 2. These are the 2 that we need to be aware of. If these things happen, then it's okay to file a joint return with your spouse and still qualify to be someone else's dependent. You can still satisfy the joint return test if you filed a joint tax return because you filed a return to claim a refund for taxes withheld, or if neither spouse would be required to file a return even if they filed married filing separate. This one's a little bit harder to understand, especially right now, but just be aware of this. It will make more sense when you look at the filing statuses. So just remember, in general, when someone files a married filing joint return, they cannot be someone else's dependent. However, if they file a joint return to claim a refund, then it's okay. They still can be someone's dependent. If they file a joint tax return, but if we looked at their returns individually as married filing separate, and they would not have been required to file a return, then that is also okay. So that's why I said this one's a little bit more harder to grasp. But eventually, once you're done with all the readings and all the videos, you will understand this one better also. But just be aware of this right now. Second test is a citizenship or residency test. So to be a dependent, the person must be one of the following. So all taxpayers who are going to be claimed as dependents must meet one of the following. They must either be a citizen or resident of the United States of America, or a resident of Canada, or a resident of Mexico. So these are all or. It just has to be one of these. Citizen or resident of USA, resident of Canada, resident of Mexico. There's an exception for an adopted child. An adopted child could have a nationality or be a resident of any country so long as the adopted child lives with a U.S. citizen. So basically, let's say a U.S. citizen goes to, they go to Peru and they start living in Peru. And while they're living there, they adopt someone who happens to be Peruvian. That child does not have a U.S. citizenship or residency at the time. They're definitely not residents of Canada or Mexico. They're resident of Peru, the child. But because they live with a U.S. citizen, even though it's not in the United States, in a different country, but they do live with a U.S. citizen, they will fit, they will qualify for this exception, and then they will meet this test.